Welcome to Wine Soundtrack USA. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world in 30 answers. Discover their stories, personalities, and passions.
Hello, friends and listeners of Wine Soundtrack. This is Allison Levine, and today I'm sitting in the barrel room with Max Marshak, who is the head winemaker of Gleason Family Vineyards. Now, Gleason Family Vineyards oversees 3 different brands within it. So, Max, welcome, and tell us about Gleason Family Vineyards and maybe some familiar brands people know.
All right, well, we are, as Gleason Family Vineyards, we are sort of a young company. The genesis of the company really started with Refugio Ranch Vineyards, which is the love affair of Kevin Gleason and a beautiful piece of property just on the south side of Santa Ynez River in the Santa Ynez AVA. And he purchased the property and built a very small, a 27-acre vineyard from the ground up, featuring quite a few different varietals, but specifically focusing on red Rhone varietals and white Rhone varietals. There are a couple of kind of ringers in there with Malvasia Bianca and Sauvignon Blanc also fitting into the program. But generally, he wanted to make a really fine red wine from Santa Ynez and a really fine white wine from Santa Ynez. And then, after a few years of producing Refugio Ranch wines, the company had the opportunity and sort of the relationship which brought them to purchasing the Roblar Winery and Vineyard, which brought in a whole nother set of wines that had been either sourced from around the state and around the county, as well as mostly estate-produced Sauvignon Blanc and red Bordeaux varietals. Okay. So they added kind of a nice set of varieties to their company repertoire, but also started sort of the expansion of what now is Gleason Family Vineyards. So I believe the acquisition of Roblar occurred in 2017, and then in December of 2021, the company purchased Buttonwood Winery and Farm, which is a local sort of legacy property. The amazing sort of package that comes with Buttonwood is what I would call a heritage vineyard for the county. Most of the vineyard was planted in 1983, which makes it one of the oldest vineyards in the area. It's unique in that it's an own-rooted planting, which means there's no rootstocks. Own-rooted planting of, again, mostly Sauvignon Blanc and red Bordeaux varietals. Over the years, they've grafted in a few interesting things to create variety. They've planted some Grenache and some Syrah, and most recently, a small block of own-rooted Chenin Blanc. So we have, we're getting to know that vineyard, and we have a lot of new varietals coming into the production program. So it's exciting.
Well, now you joined on as head winemaker in 2020, and obviously have that's a nice overview. And I noticed a little hesitation in your voice as you explain everything, because it's a lot of it's a lot of varieties and a lot of things. But I'm wondering, what is your total case production? I don't know if you break it down by each brand or overall.
Yeah. So overall, now that we've absorbed the Buttonwood production, we'll be somewhere in the 18,000 case range. Historically, Refugio has produced somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 cases, depending on vintage. Roblar, depending on how much fruit they've been sourcing previous to my winemaking presence, was somewhere in the 6,000 to 7,000 range, I believe. And Buttonwood was actually had a pretty broad range, I think, between, say, 7,000 and 10,000. So I think the sweet spot for each brand is somewhere around 6,000 cases if we get it all pulled together.
And I know you said you were sourcing some fruit for the Roblar brand, or they have been doing that. How many acres do you have total in estate fruit?
So Refugio Ranch is 27 acres. Roblar is 21.7, I believe. And Buttonwood is just under 42. Wow. It's a little misleading when you look at the productions from the from the three properties. Refugio Ranch, being only 27 acres, still produces a healthy quantity of fruit. Many of our plantings are 2,000 plus vines to the acre, so it's a more kind of modern Santa Barbara County style vineyard where, viticulture learned a lot over the years and moved away from those really broad rows and wide vine spacings. Buttonwood is a good example of an older system where most of our plantings there are in the 870 vines per acre. And then Roblar is somewhere in between. We have some blocks that are sitting right at like that 10,089 vines per acre, or sorry, not 10,000, 1,089, and then some blocks that are over 2,000 vines per acre.
So are the wines, they're all available locally, direct to consumer, and are they also out in the market?
Refugio Ranch and Roblar at this point are almost exclusively direct to consumer through tasting room and wine club sales. Buttonwood, over the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years, has created a relationship with Classic Wines, I believe it is, Bronco, to distribute a couple of their wines. Mostly it's a Sauvignon Blanc, it's an estate Sauvignon Blanc, and a rosé that they put out into, you can find it in grocery stores and things like that.
Okay, enough about the winery. I'll get you off the hook on that. Let's talk about you. What is your first memory relevant to wine?
My first memory relevant to wine, probably most prominent would be an interesting experience. I grew up on a little island off the northwest coast of Washington State, where there was essentially no wine industry, but there was one winery and one small vineyard on Lopez Island, and the winemaker had three sons who I went to school with, so I was friends with his entire family. And over the course of just growing up with this family, I ended up spending some time in their vineyard, and then in probably late middle school and early high school, I would help them out during harvest. It was a kind of a old school community style event where they would call all their friends and we'd pick the fruit and whatnot. And I remember tasting, they grow these interesting white hybrid varietals that are kind of hybridized from mostly German varietals. And they're very, very aromatic, full of terpenes, and they have that Gewürztraminer kind of characteristic. And I remember being shocked because you can taste this fruit and it tastes like a terpene-rich grape. It tastes like a bouquet of flowers. And then the first time I ever tasted the wine that had come from that same fruit, and I realized how many things were the same and how many things were different. I think it was like this really remarkable moment for me where the obvious features of the product being translated were really there, and the mystery of how they had transformed was also very apparent. So I think that's probably it's a
very descriptive memory. I mean, a very significant memory.
Yeah.
I'm curious, since then, and all the wines you've gotten to taste, was there one of those aha moment wines that you drank? Obviously, this seemed to be an aha moment of kind of connecting grape to wine, but a specific wine that was one of those aha moments of, the luxury, the grandeur, the emotion, the shock, the awe, something about wine.
Yeah, I moved to New York City some years ago, in pursuit of a girl, and yeah, I know you laughed.
Well, you're not
she's
there
my
anymore.
wife now.
Okay.
But so I'm a real country boy. The island I grew up on, for good context, actually, is the same geographical area as the island of Manhattan. There's roughly a population of 2,000 people on Lopez Island. Manhattan is somewhere around 2 million.
Right.
So just, so I was definitely a fish out of water in a sense. I moved there on a whim, and, I didn't have any money and I was scared. But I got a job bartending, and pretty quickly was sort of just blown away by the amazing food service industry that is, so accessible in New York City, and how amazingly dynamic it is from a ethnic and, the world of cuisine is encompassed in that small or large urban environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I started kind of delving into it, and wine became more and more and more interesting as I, made connections and dined at interesting restaurants and interacted with people who are putting together these really fascinating wine programs. And at one point I was with my good friend who was my general manager at the Breslin, and he took me down to his brother's restaurant, which was Myelino, which is actually a Danny Myers joint. And we were having some bar snacks that his brother, the chef, was sending out, which is always kind of one of those VIP experiences. And then someone behind the bar poured us a Quintarelli. It was a Ripasso, and I don't remember the vintage, but it was very good. and it was one of those moments where I was like, it definitely stopped me in my tracks. I'd had a lot of different wines at that point, but it was, for some reason, it sort of took hold of me, and I wasn't sure how it was possible that it could be that good. It was just like, it was so intensely delicious. It was so pleasurable. And so obviously those kinds of moments with wine get the wheels spinning.
Yeah, absolutely. So now that you're, settled in a country lifestyle on the West Coast, and you brought her back as your wife and got her out of the city, but I'm curious, if we were to come to your home, what would we find in there? What sort of wines do you like to drink? What do you collect? What are you storing?
White wines, I'm pretty boring. I'm pretty predictable. I love Chardonnay. I love Chardonnay.
From any particular places or all over?
I love white Burgundy. For me, many of those wines are still just benchmark in the varietal. But otherwise, I'm going for Santa Rita Hills Chardonnay. I think it's without a doubt world class and extremely high value. And that's not just because I'm biased, because I've worked with the fruit. It really, I would line up my favorite Burgundies with, my favorite Santa Rita Hills wines, in Chardonnays particularly, and feel really good about the way they match up.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I don't buy very much wine. I'm definitely one of those winemakers, I guess, who I will sort of, at the last minute, grab a bottle from the tasting room, which I may have made, or my team certainly produced, or I'm kind of a strange wine drinker in that I don't really collect wines. I don't really.
You're a little more at the moment.
I'm kind of on the fly, and I love when a friend or someone I work with will kind of take the time and effort to put together a tasting or source really interesting bottles. I absolutely love it.
So is there anything you drank recently with a meal or just with friends that would drink really well? Off the top of my head, I've been distracted just because we're getting ready for harvest. I'm drawing a total blank on great wines of late. It's like we can come back to that.
Yeah.
I'm curious, I'm sitting here with a lot of wine sitting in front of me. There are probably about 20 bottles in front of me, a variety of varietals. Do you think there's a such thing as a perfect variety?
Yes and no. I think that when any wine is really, really great, it is it's sort of in context is the perfect varietal. Mm-hmm. And it's always when it's matched with the right vineyard site and then thoughtful production, and it all kind of comes together to make that wine singular and typical and, as close to perfect as it can be. If I had to choose my favorite varietals, the ones that I think just day in and day out satisfy me, Syrah is way up there. Chardonnay, like I said, and then Cab and Cab Franc, and sort of the blend, the dance that those red Bordeaux varietals.
Interesting. So
to me, kind of always hit high marks.
So perfection is really a personal thing. Perfection is really a personal thing of what you like, as opposed to perfection for all.
As an ideal?
Yeah.
Or an object, or like a theory of form?
Yeah.
Yes and no. I mean, I think what's interesting to me is that, well, okay, to be fair, I've never interacted with the perfect wine. I've interacted with really great ones. And so I think that it's really interesting, like as a theory, we're all pursuing that perfect objective. But why it's hard for me to say that like Syrah is perfect, because I've never tasted a wine that I thought was, well, I shouldn't say never, but they're rarely absolutely complete on their own. So I find that blends tend to be very compelling. The closer a single varietal gets to being self-sufficient and complete on its own, that is moving it towards
Perfection,
but I find that it rarely is achieved.
The elusive perfection.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, you said at first to you achieving perfection for yourself, but then also the elusive. So I'm wondering the role of wine critics and scores in that. A lot of people look to those numbers that tell them what is supposed to be, in someone's opinion, close to perfection. I'm wondering, what's your opinion on wine critics and scores as you roll your eyes at me?
That is a loaded question, especially for me. I have strong opinions about critics in general. But I will say this, I think it's okay to have sort of a control board. Mm-hmm. Personally, I think that winemakers should be responsible for that themselves. That's why I put a tremendous amount of time and energy into cultivating my team, my colleagues, the people I work closely with every day are people I work with because I trust them and because they offer a different perspective. They are willing to argue with me. So I take advantage of their presence and their input to help me kind of find the truth. I might think one thing, they might think another, and I know that somewhere between the two, the wine is better off. Mm-hmm. So I really try to take advantage of people and opinions so that I'm not trying to make wine in some sort of vacuum or talking myself into something that's not true. And I think that for the consumer, critics offer a certain safety net. Mm-hmm. I think like anybody with a palate, if you can align yourself with someone and they consistently produce recommendations that you find to be true, then I think there's value in that. unfortunately, what I see generally is that great wines get overlooked and mediocre wines get more attention than they deserve. So I don't know. And I think that value tends to get lost in that kind of conundrum.
Absolutely. Well, so speaking of wine drinking, as a wine drinker, red, white, or rosé?
I love them all.
Stiller
Again, so but I'm a seasonal drinker. I don't find myself drinking a lot of big red wines in when it's 97 degrees. I'm more likely crushing a cold bottle of rosé or white, but again back to the kind of question of perfection. The greatest rosé in the world still won't satisfy me in the way that a really great Cab or Syrah will.
Yeah.
There's something never quite hits at the same level.
So speaking of hitting at the right level, a lot of people, and it sounds like you've had this experience when you lived in New York and bar bites and wines and stuff like that, about pairing food and wine. And a lot of times combining those two, I know I personally, but a lot of us aspire to that level of perfection or that perfect moment of synergy. So I'm wondering how you approach food and wine pairing. Are you looking for contrasts? Are you looking for similarities? Do you follow rules, or is that all, thrown out the window and, hey, it's hot, I want a rosé, I don't care what I'm eating?
All of the above. Yeah. I'm trying to think, when people ask for a recommendation, I generally tell them, like you said, look for contrast or look for sort of alignment. So, if you want to eat a really, really bright salad with a lot of vinegar in the dressing, I would say get something lean and mean and crunchy, or try to find something with richness and soft edges. If you're eating spicy things, avoid super tannic wines because they just don't charm each other. But otherwise, I don't have many hard, fast rules when it comes to wine pairing. I think I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I think a lot of people potentially overthink it, and it makes them anxious. And I think those great moments of, like you said, synergy with food and wine and experience or company, they come together because the moment is there, and it doesn't necessarily come from premeditation all the time.
Yeah.
I work with our chef a lot here just on site, and when we get to, if we're tasting wines, it's easy for me then to kind of translate into food, and usually they're alignments of kind. But other than that, I would say it's still sort of abstract to me, because sometimes I think I'm going to nail it with some combination and I'm way off, and other times I'm fearful of the result and it's way better than I anticipated. So
experiment and have fun.
Experiment for sure, and I think just wait for those special moments because they're hard to produce.
Yeah. You can't really fabricate them. But I'm curious, okay, we have a lot of wines in front of us. You make a lot more wines. If space aliens were to land on your property, which of the wines that you make would you want to present to them to say, welcome to Gleason Family Vineyards? And I mean, if you can do this quickly, you might even say, if they came to Buttonwood, you do this, and if they came to Refugio, they do this. I don't know how much you want to separate them or include them.
Yeah, well, I think I would have to, for each property, I'd have to choose one wine.
Okay, so go for it.
For Buttonwood, I would choose the Red Bordeaux blend, which has been labeled as Trevin over the years. For Roblar, would be the same. It would be a Cab-based blend with a lot of Cab Franc in it, and maybe some Merlot and Petit Verdot. And then for Refugio, it would be Barbareño, which is Syrah with a splash of Petit Syrah.
Oh, all three big reds. Well, not necessarily big, but bigger style reds. And welcome to the winery. So now you described 3 bigger reds with each brand, but I'm curious, for someone who hasn't had the pleasure to visit, to explore the wines that you're making, what do you think they're missing out on?
Well, I can't. What you're missing out on really is variety right now. If you go to any of the properties, you're just embraced with a selection of really amazing options. Refugio offers a few things, like Malvasia. It's one of the few places in California that grows Malvasia Bianca. Whether you like it or not, it's unique,
Yeah.
And in total contrast, the Rhone whites at Refugio are tremendous. Whether, texturally, weight class, everything about those 2 wines are on opposite sides of the world, Mm-hmm. And it grows just gorgeous and elegant and aromatic Grenache, and then Petit Syrah. So again, it's a property of contrast. Buttonwood is sort of similar in that it produces these just tremendously aromatic and ethereal Sauvignon Blancs, and then beautiful, intense, kind of herbal, dusty Cab Franc, Merlot. So again, the property just has these kind of innate contrasting characteristics.
Well, speaking of the properties, you have different properties. You've been in this valley for a while, but you have been on this property now going into your second or third vintage. And you're getting to know all of the vineyards, all of the vines. And I'm curious, when you're walking through the vines, what sort of relationship have you been establishing with them? Do you talk to the vines? Is there a communication that happens? Have they introduced themselves to you? Made a good impression?
Yeah, absolutely. I like to be in the vineyard alone as much as I take my team into the vineyard as much as possible. For me, it's really just about time, just spending time, waiting for observations to kind of filter in that are either conscious or not. And for me, it's less about individual vines and more about the total sensation that you get from one vineyard to the next. So if you spend time at Refugio, you just feel Refugio, and it's impossible to quantify. You can't truly describe it. There's just this sense of what is Refugio. It's the underlying soul of the place. And when I spend time in the vineyard, that's what I'm looking for. Whether it's Roblar, Refugio, Buttonwood, I'm trying to find that kind of pulse. Otherwise, I'm being analytical and looking at leaves and thinking like, okay, why is that turning red, or what's going on here? Is there enough water? Is there enough nutrients? Is there too much water? Is there,
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just analytical conversation with myself more than anything.
So a little more zen-ness. So you're about to start harvest. You're getting ready to start picking. You said you've built a team around you of people that you trust, people with differing opinions, but you all come together. So I'm wondering, do you have any rituals that you do at the start of harvest to kick it off with your team?
Yes. We scrub the winery from top to bottom. And actually, that doesn't sound like much of a ritual, but it is. It's really, it's the easiest way to get mentally prepared for making a big mess is to spend a lot of time cleaning and organizing and getting into that mise en place of the chef's space where everything's in its place, and you can stop thinking about all of those details because they're all in line. So you can go to work, and it can be smooth and functional, quiet. I spend most of my time as a quote, boss, just trying to make sure my coworkers are tranquilo, feeling good, getting things done, not rushing, but being productive. Just finding that sweet spot between being energized and not being overwhelmed.
Well, I mean, I can see that because as we spoke, you're going to start picking next week, so you're planning and you've got that time to do that. Because I've visited some other wineries that harvest came in a little earlier and they started picking this week when they weren't quite ready, in the winery with their mise en place. So the Tranquilo sounds really good. So I'm curious, when you spend your time here and you're getting everyone calm, but when you're not here, how do you like to spend your free time?
My free time, I have 2 little boys, so free time is kind of an imaginary thing. But I love to take them. We scramble on rocks. Like Lizard's Mouth is amazing. I love to fish, and the boys are starting to fish as well. Hiking, generally kind of just getting off the property and finding a new environment to explore. That's generally what I do in my free time, yeah.
And since you don't have a lot of free time, I'm also imagining you don't have a lot of date nights with your wife. But if you were to want to create a romantic atmosphere that was not like a crazy with the 2 kids and everything, just for the 2 of you, what sort of wines would you open to set for a romantic evening?
Oh, champagne, always.
It's like the sign. I Champagne's open, kids are asleep.
And I'm definitely not one of those, I don't need a special occasion to drink champagne. It does not have to be a holiday at all. You talk about food and wine pairing. There's nothing I won't drink champagne with. I just absolutely love it. And again, value, I'll spend $60 on a bottle of champagne and be really, really happy with it. So,
champagne sets that mood.
It really does. Yeah, there's no question about it. And then I don't know. It depends on the wine list too, right? Like if we're out, I don't know what's available. Sometimes I just can't help myself when good things are available. So.
Like a kid in a candy shop.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm curious, when you look back at your career, what would you say is a piece of advice, and maybe it's something that you just live your life by, maybe it's not career oriented, but is there a piece of advice someone gave you along the way that you try to live or work by, or that you find handy when it comes to getting ready for harvest?
I would not say that there was any advice that I got that really most of what prepared me for winemaking is just experience, not necessarily in winemaking. I think that is the most important thing about winemaking is that it's really, really dynamic. It's not defined by one activity or one skill. Mm-hmm. And that's I came to winemaking sort of, let's say, late, but I'd done a lot of other things that set me up for the style of work and problem solving and things that one does in the industry. So, I didn't study. I'm an English major. I worked in construction for many years. I put myself through college, commercial fishing. I worked in the restaurant industry in New York, so it's like the confluence of just a lot of different things makes me well suited for the industry for whatever reason.
So when you look back at your career, what would you say is one of your proudest achievements to date?
In the wine industry specifically?
Or in your career? You just can't say your children.
Proudest achievement.
Because we know your children are probably pretty proud achievements, but assuming that they were well behaved today.
I would say it was taking the risk to jump into an internship in 2012. So I moved, or my now wife and I, we moved from New York City. We were doing very well, to Santa Barbara. Neither of us had ever been to Santa Barbara. I had never officially worked in wine, and I had an internship just literally through meeting a guy at a bar, at Fest Parker, and I was 28. I wasn't young. Anyway, I wasn't old, but I was 28, and I was going to go to work for $12.50 an hour in a place I'd never been. And we packed up the car and we moved to Santa Barbara. We didn't have a place to live. It was ridiculous. But here we are.
Yeah. Wow.
So I love, if anything has taught me, if there's any great successes over the course of my working life, it's been to, never be afraid of the thing you're most afraid of. Like taking some kind of risk, trying something new has always opened up opportunity. It's never been a step backwards.
Yeah. That's great attitude and good advice to give anyone, right? Take risk and don't be afraid, especially if it's to pursue something that you love. Yeah. So I want you to complete this sentence for me. A table without wine is like?
The Sahara Desert.
Okay, another scenario. Now's the fun part where you can, try. Let's see how quick you are with your answers here. But now we're sitting at a large table here. We've got your wine on the table. You've made this wine. This is your baby, and you've got a seat next to you. So, who from any walk of life, living or deceased, famous or maybe not famous, but would you want to share a bottle of wine you made with?
I love that question. I think maybe Willie Nelson.
Huh.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Not what I would expect to hear.
Yeah. I might share, some other substances with him.
He'll share other things with you.
Exactly. But yeah, I think that'd be a good place to start.
Wow. So, another question. If you were sent to a deserted island and could only take 3 wines with you, what 3 wines would they be?
Chave Hermitage. Montebello Cab. And a Santa Rita Hill Chardonnay. Can't decide which though.
Huh. I like the range.
Yeah,
I like the range. Very interesting. And very clearly, based on some of the wines you talked before, you picked your Syrah, you picked your Cabernet, and you picked your Chardonnay. Nicely done. You're very on point. I get it. So now we're going to play our little fun game I warned you about, where we pair wine with music. This is the very end. So this is the foot you leave with. Almost. Got a lot of wines in front of you, so I'm going to have a little fun picking because you have no idea. So I'm going to start with, we've been sipping the Buttonwood Sauvignon Blanc. So maybe tell us just a little bit about that wine, and then what does it conjure up for you?
Sorry, which one?
The Sauvignon Blanc we were sipping.
It's extremely fresh and aromatic. Lots of energy.
Yeah, the Muscat clone.
Yep. Wait, I'm pairing this with music, right?
Yeah.
Is that the notion?
Genre, song, album, whatever comes to mind.
It's actually more challenging than I thought it was going to be. Gosh, I don't even know. To be honest, there are very few times in the day when I'm not listening to music, but it's interesting to have it, like, to think about it in that context. Honestly, I would probably go with Bob Marley.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's something beachy. It's almost a margarita, like.
I like it.
You know.
Okay, Refugio Ranch, the Malvasia Bianca.
That's a total blank for me. I don't know.
Poor Willie Nelson's not even getting any love there.
No, that I definitely wouldn't go. I wouldn't go down the Willie road with that. I think it's much more feminine. It's I don't know. Yeah, I might go with like the Lost Broadcast, Bonnie Raitt.
Okay.
Early when she's young.
Ooh. And now you mentioned a wine from each brand that you would give to the space aliens. So let's talk about the Roblar Cabernet with a lot of Cab Franc in it.
Mm-hmm. I would probably go for something a little moody, like some Bill Evans or something. Yeah.
See, if we let you pause a little, you get it. Okay, one more, because you got it. The Refugio Syrah Petit Syrah Barbareño.
We would definitely go with Willie, or maybe Jerry Jeff Walker,
Yeah, see,
we'd go down that road.
Yeah.
You know, good old, outlaw country, something a little bluegrassy, for sure.
See how quickly, you got the rhythm?
Yep.
We're finished now. You don't have to do any more.
It's interesting. I always think in very musical terms, like in my own thoughts. Wine is kind of very musical. But I've never been asked to, pair a wine with a song or even an artist.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
You're never going to look at wine the same way or music the same way again. So I'm curious, what wine region in the world is at the top of your bucket list to explore?
Well, they all are. To be fair, I've done almost no wine travel. For someone in my, career, that's one of the kind of pieces that's missing. I spent a little bit of time in Burgundy, and it was very interesting and illuminating. But, bucket list would definitely be parts of the Rhone Valley, Bordeaux for sure. I would love to see some of the South American and wine regions.
So the world.
Yeah. I think, and Italy is, you could, travel Italian wine for the rest of your life and never even get started, I think. So, I don't know.
You have a lot of travel to start planning.
Yeah,
You can take kids with you.
I'm gonna have to retire early and just go wine drinking around the world.
That's right, absolutely. Well, if someone wanted to come wine drinking here, where can they find you? How can they find you? And what can they experience? We have tasting rooms that are open to the public. I think all of them are open 7 days a week. Refugio serves in Los Olivos. Buttonwood is just outside of Solvang off Alamo Pintado. And Roblar is right off the 154. We have exquisite tasting room environments across the board, especially the outdoor spaces at Buttonwood and Roblar are absolutely stunning, and they are definitely the place to lose a few hours. Yeah, and again, just a tremendous amount of variety and quality, if I do say so.
Yeah.
Well, you do say so. So each one has their own website, but are they also at
I
GleasonFamilyVineyards.com?
think they're all discreet at this point.
So 3 different websites: Refugio Ranch, Roblar, and Buttonwood Winery and Farm or Vineyard. Check them out. 3 great wines. Max, thank you. I know I put you on the spot. You had a lot of wine to have to sort through, but thank you for joining us, and let's start tasting.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack USA. For details and updates, visit our website, winesoundtrack.com.